My name is Jonathan Gilliam, and this is The Experts. And welcome back to the podcast. I am struggling today to find, even though it's crazy on the news. I mean, there's just nonsense going on everywhere. It still is a struggle for me to sometimes find stuff to talk about that's meaningful. You know, I don't want to just come on here like every other podcast out there and repeat the news that you could go online and see. And just give an opinion of something that's ridiculous. I mean, because every day the reality is the headlines are they're just stupid. But again, as I always say, there's always something behind the headlines. And quite often I find that when I look at multiple things and I sit here and I stare at the computer for hours on end and I turn the TV on and watch the different networks. And it sounds like a really hard job, doesn't it? Sounds like a really tough time, but it is difficult to find the thing that I think you all need to hear, especially day after day. But I've just gone through this stuff and poured through it. And I think the biggest thing I'm seeing today is nothing that's new to you, but it is the overwhelming censorship, which I think I told you all that I'm now mysteriously out of Facebook jail. Somehow my account just unlocked all of a sudden, and so did so many of these other people that I know that were in Facebook jail. All of a sudden, just boom, we're unlocked. I'm still locked on Instagram, but for no reason, by the way, no reason that I didn't post anything different than I've ever posted. One individual reached out on LinkedIn and said that they had been blocked. This should scare you to death. They had been blocked on Facebook because of a direct message that they had sent to their daughter who was in another state, and they were condemning something about the Democrats in the direct message. It's on Messenger, Facebook Messenger, and they put them in Facebook jail because of that. That should be very alarming, because I don't know about the legality of all this, but you should have a reasonable expectation of privacy in direct messages. I mean, you do have that reasonable expectation of privacy. Nobody ever talks about these rules and regulations. Like if you go into we don't have phone booths anymore, but there used to be phone booths. And if you went in there and closed the door and started talking on the phone, cell phone, or on a regular phone about something, the government, in order to listen to that, had to get a warrant, a Title III warrant to listen to that, because you had a reasonable expectation of privacy when you go into that phone booth. That was kind of the litmus test for this. I would think if the laws were written properly, that when you go into your direct messages, that you would have a reasonable expectation of privacy. But anybody that knows anything about online stuff, you're going to know in social media, like anything else, there is, you're being watched. You're being watched. Things are being recorded. And we need to remember that, because you're dealing with leftists that don't care about your privacy. I talked about this before. I watched this show called The Social Dilemma that's on Netflix. By the way, how is Netflix, how are their stocks down? I mean, since March, Netflix really is, and I guess Prime and some of these other things, but that's been the only thing that there is to watch besides regular TV. Regular TV sucks. How is it that Netflix is down? I have a feeling it's because they're so leftist that people have just refused to turn them on. I can't say that I'm one of those people, because I, was bored out of my mind. And Netflix takes a lot of things from AMC, which I think makes the best TV or movies, period. Most of their series are like movies. If you haven't had a chance to watch Turn, watch that. It's about the Revolutionary War and George Washington. And your mind's going to be blown away when you watch this show. You'll understand why the Third Amendment, after freedom of speech and freedom to bear arms, right? The first two amendments, why quartering in your home was such a big deal to these individuals back, the founding fathers, 240 something years ago, right? It was a big deal because when they're occupying in your home, you have no freedom to be you. They can tell you, which you'll see in this show, Turn, Turn. You'll see that, if they were sitting at the dinner table and they don't like your conversation, they would just tell you, this is not good conversation, you change it. Or I'm hungry, make me something to eat. Now, when you think about social media and the computer and the TV and the lies that are spread, how your kids go home or go to school and they come home and their minds are changed because of this same ideology that permeates everything. They are quartering in our homes just in a different way. They're quartering in your social media. You can't just have free social media as far as the leftists are concerned. Not on a leftist account. That's why Drago approached me. If you don't know that story, watch the second or listen to the second episode of the Experts podcast, and you'll hear Drago's story and why we've created ConnectZing, which is free speech. You're going to have free speech on this. You're not going to be monitored. In fact, we even come up, you'll like this, if you're sick of the trolls on social media, we're coming up, remember, this is all being developed. Right now is a good time to get over there so you can be a founding member of ConnectZing. But if there's a troll, how many of you are sick of these trolls that they have robots that, when I say robots, bots that are bot farms, they have technology that will literally push people over from the left to go and inundate a post that you have. Now, you may think, yeah, right, you're just making that up. I'm not making that up. In fact, General McChrystal from, the famed General McChrystal from the Army is a part of a group that is never Trumpers that hate Trump, and they are using technology that they developed specifically to go against ISIS and Al-Qaeda to go online and go against anything that supports Trump, so they can kill the post with overwhelming negative leftist trolls. But on ConnectZing, you'll be able, if you report these people as a troll, then eventually, if there's enough reports, they're going to get a big T, either where their profile name is or next to their name, something we haven't decided on that yet. But there's going to the scarlet letter T. They can still say what they want, troll, but they're going to be marked as a troll, so you can just block them off your page. That way, you have the power to stop it. And it's quite frankly, if we applying that, when you think about the reality of the news and how the leftists, it's funny because yes, they have troll farms and they have all these ways of getting people over there to troll an account, but it's literally the biggest troll are the social media companies themselves. So you'll see, if you watch Turn, I know I kind of went out of the way there, but if you watch this show Turn, you'll see it's fascinating. You're going to see in a different way, but you'll see the same thing that's happening today that happened then. So it's interesting that, when we think about this and we think about the reasonable expectation of privacy that a reasonable person would have in your direct messages on these things where they say it's encrypted and nobody's going to be looking, it's point-to-point conversation, that's a lie. Even Snapchat finally admitted several years ago that these messages that supposedly disappeared hadn't disappeared. They were on servers. All those pictures that people were sending were still there. They thought it disappeared. So when I'm looking at all this on the news and I see how these things pop up, how that we're just inundated by this leftist negative, and it's not even information flow, it's intimidation really in the form of fake information. And I look at people, I'm telling you, I can't talk about this enough now. The demonic influence. There is demonic influence everywhere. And when a good example of this is today, Keith Olbermann, I think it was today. I'm pretty sure it was today because it was reported today. I'm going to put this on here. This is Keith Olbermann. Remember him? He was a sports announcer. There's nothing else really to his resume but sports broadcaster. Now, I think he just does this online. And of course, like so many other people, he does these videos and he puts like a banner up behind him, makes him look like he's on regular TV. He's not on regular TV. Tell you the truth, that's this confession to you. Doing a podcast, I feel so much better about. And I probably will end up recording my podcast again, but primarily it's a podcast. But when I used to do the expert show, and this is, I do like social media in this way that you can put your opinion out. You should feel free to put your opinion out. But it was funny because I got to a point where I thought to myself, why, who am I to be putting these videos out every day? I'm not signed by a network. I produce this thing on my own. People have donated for the equipment and for things like that, or I spent my own money on the equipment and making my own studio. And I felt kind of ridiculous. A lot of these people are so narcissistic, they don't feel ridiculous at all, even though they don't have the experience to be talking about anything. But I did question that. And it was a difficult time when I had to sit back. Well, now everybody does it, right? Everybody's doing the online, whether it's a podcast or whether it's an online with social media type thing. Keith Olbermann's one of those people, but no experience. Of course, these people are so narcissist, they don't get it, But I want you to hear what Keith Olbermann was saying. This is so vile, but it's so egregious and aggressive that it just screams what I've been talking about, the demonic influence. We can call it possession, demonic influence. It's throughout media, throughout social media, throughout these activists and big money donors and politicians, this whole family tree. Now listen to this.
We are all tired.
Whoa, easy there, big guy. Good Lord. All right, let me start that over again.
We are all tired. But mostly I'm tired of the needless sickness and the needless death and the needless terror because this mentally incompetent, inhuman, dumb bastard has lied about this disease in 1,000 different ways, a different way for each different political need he has sensed. And
if you could see his face, he's literally about to explode. In fact, somebody on Twitter had posted, geez, dude, take it easy on or maybe you should slip over to decaf so you don't have an aneurysm. I was like, stop, don't tell him that. Let him figure it out the hard way.
I'm tired of the thought that we are now going to repeat the months of March and April in this country, a country that should have learned something, but which in large part has been authorized to wallow and die in its own stupidity because of one man, one dumb bastard, one selfish son of a bitch, one real-life Major French attacking the only hope we have, the science, and insist.
So according to Olbermann, you have no hope that God loves you, no hope that, the country has patriots in it, no hope in anything but science. And science, by the way, is just as left as the media. And in most cases, it actually leans to the left, just like newspapers and, all these newspapers that endorse political opponents. I don't understand. I thought the news and the media, that they were supposed to be neutral. But actually, as it turns out, that neutrality is something that it's another lie. You've been told there's no law that says the media has to be neutral. There's none of that stuff. And so they end up picking a side the same way. But let's finish with this idiot.
Science is wrong, and Fauci is an idiot, and only I can save you, and insisting you can do whatever you want, then the disease affects almost nobody. Donald Trump should be on trial for 220,000 murders, death penalty for each count.
Okay, first of all, how do you kill somebody 240? How many did he say? 220? Yes, 220,000 deaths. So that's interesting. Keith Olbermann, if you go to his Twitter, you'll see that he puts up these things all the time, and he's just unhinged on all of them, but it's out of control unhinged. I know it's an act. I used to see this guy walking down the sidewalk over by where he used to live in Manhattan all the time. He looks like just as big of a jerk in person as he does on these videos, and he's an angry individual from what I hear. But it's a good example of this demonic influence and the lies that are all over the place. But not, as I've talked about over and over again, it's not just in media. This is a controlled, not even experiment. This is a controlled operation, okay? It's controlled operation, and you can see it when you look at the combination of all the different things that are going on. You look at, for instance, the messaging that's going out from governors today alone, right? Today alone, Governor Whitmer said that the increase it's without evidence. This is what she says. Whitmer, without evidence, says Trump's rhetoric caused hate crimes to increase exponentially. So Trump's rhetoric, not the shutdown that she did in her state, where, and this happened in all the states, where homicides and car theft, also spousal and domestic abuse went up because people are locked down. You know, and I understand the very beginning of this whole thing, which we hadn't faced to this extreme of what we thought it was at the beginning in modern time. As we see now, really the numbers of deaths that are still happening are elderly, and nothing is being done. Cuomo in New York City is blaming the president for all the deaths in New York City. He's blaming the president for this and saying that he's a super spreader. This is how ridiculous it's not become. This is how ridiculous it is. And how the media just feeds itself. Listen, a perfect example of all this is the way that the FBI, the DOJ, media, and social media, actually, how they all work together to further the Trump-Russia collusion lie. Now, remember, the whole thing is made up. The whole thing is made up. And it's not just Democrats. There are Republicans as well that were involved in this. You can call them rhinos, but they're really Republican establishment people that are involved in this. So they all colluded together to the detail of what was happening, to the point where a lot of what was being leaked by the FBI was first of all, it was fake information, okay? It was like for the dossier. Let's take the dossier, for instance, as a perfect example. Fake dossier, paid for not just by Democrats, but by the Republicans as well, paid for, created by Russian intel and a former British intel officer, created by them, then passed to the FBI by John McCain. All right, we know who it was paid by, the Democrats and Republicans, both, never Trumpers, okay? Paid for, passed by John McCain to the FBI. And then the FBI took that fake information. Remember, the author of that information was a paid informant for the FBI. It's not like he just came out of nowhere or was hired. They just hired this one particular guy to do this, to find the information. It wasn't that. He was, along with the Russian individuals, crafted this because he was paid to craft it. They then took it after John McCain gave it to the FBI. The FBI took it, leaked the information to the press, who then reported it. They took the fake information and the press reports and used that as evidence to get a FISA to report on the president. Excuse me, not just to report, but to spy on the president. That's how closely they work together. I've said it over and over again. Demonic influence is the only way, and involvement, shouldn't just say influence, but demonic involvement is the only way to explain this. There's no other way that they could be doing this to the level that they are. No way that this many people would keep it secret, because some people do have a conscience and eventually they would spill the beans. Unless they're possessed, influenced, whatever you want to call it. Now, this was also coordinated on many, many, many different levels. And as we can see now, it's reached a fever pitch. Try saying that 10 times. A fever pitch to the point where up until last week, when Twitter screwed up big time, because I don't think all of us that were being banned and censored and locked out on Facebook, I really don't think anything would have happened. There would have been minimal pressure from Congress if it hadn't have been the New York Post, Kayleigh McEnany, and these other high-level individuals. They don't look at us, trust me, Washington, D.C. people don't look at us as anything. So I think it's a good example, as you can see, if Twitter hadn't have screwed up, the heat wouldn't be on social media right now. And they're a huge part of this. Every single thing that they accuse the president of, every single thing that they accuse Russia of, it's the left that's doing that. And some involvement by Rhino establishment Republicans. Some of them are ideologically driven. Other ones are power driven. Now, this is a very interesting thing. I was reading a little while ago that the Democrats are going to walk out or not show up. They're going to protest the Amy Coney Barrett. I always have a hard time with their name. They're going to protest, either not be there or get up and walk out on the vote. And this is a great example of how coordinated the left is. When you look at the other side, okay, I've met several of these different state senators and congressmen from New York. When Cuomo was trying to get all power without any, so he could do, quote unquote, so he could do emergency stuff. This was earlier this year. They had an emergency vote. And the Republicans could have said, no, you don't get all power. You still have to approve a lot of things. You still have to work the government system the way it was meant to be. They didn't do that. They folded and voted with the Democrats to give Cuomo all power without legislation for a year. Why did they do that? Because PPE was they were somehow associated with that, and they were afraid, this is what their excuse is, they were afraid that if they didn't vote for this, that they wouldn't get the PPE they would need for their areas. I mean, listen, you go to the media, or you're a congressman or a senator, or state senator or congressman, or you go to the president, or you go to your federal senator or congressman. The Republicans could have made a beef about this, but they don't. They don't do that. They don't do anything. They just sit back and they placate everything that's going on because they want to get voted. They want to get reelected. And that's how we get into this situation. The left doesn't do that. They are organized. I'm not just putting this all in the Republican Party. The conservatives, all of you that are listening, I can guarantee you that without, of course, again, with demonic influence, the left, the politicians can say something and the left acts on it. That's how well trained they are. If the president says something, the right somewhat acts upon it. But if something was in Congress and they wanted to act it out, they wanted to go forward with it on the Republican side, the majority of the people aren't going to do anything. They expect, the conservatives always put people in office and expect them to do everything. They don't hold them accountable. The people they're not leaning all over them saying, we're going to vote you out. A lot of the times, most of the time, I don't think people realize what's actually happening in the Republican Party as far as how people get picked and pushed forward. Primarily, I mean, look, in Florida is a great example of this. If they don't agree with who you are, or you don't offer them something personally, and I'm talking about a few people in the chain from the local level up to the federal level where the money flows from. They would rather see a Democrat get elected a lot of the times than somebody that they don't think that they can control. I've seen it. This isn't just me. So I keep saying that the Republican Party needs to be taken over. There needs to be a coup on the Republican Party, and the people, the conservatives, the originalists, the constitutionalists need to take it back. So again, I'm all kind of all over the place, but it's kind of all going back to the same thing. As I go and I look at these headlines and I see what's happening, it all goes back to the manufacturing of the news. Everywhere I turn, the news it's manufactured. Listen to Leslie Stahl as she's talking about this interview that she did with the president. And of course, she's talking to another person from 60 Minutes. And they're in front of, I don't know who they're in front of, but the way that she's talking and the way that she's describing this, she's described. Well, just listen to it, and then I'll explain this to you.
Before the interview, I met with him in Trump Tower, and he really is the same off camera that he is on camera, exactly the same.
If you could see her face, it's so smug, and she truly believes that the president is just this bad person, that he's just the same obnoxious way as he is off camera as he is on camera. So I don't doubt that he is with these people, with the media people, because listen, if you were insulted and lied about and spied upon 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year, and I'm not just talking about every hour, I'm talking about every second of every hour for over 4 years, that these lies were being leveled upon you. I know I wouldn't give them any breaks, and I first of all, I wouldn't be giving them any interviews. I think that's where the one mistake is, but that's why she's complaining. Listen to her.
And at one point, he started to attack the press. And it's just me and my boss and him. He has a huge office. And he's attacking the press. And there were no cameras. There was nothing going on. And I said, that is getting tired. Why are you doing this?
It's only getting tired to the press, Leslie Stahl, because you all are leftists. It's just tiring to you because he literally calls you on your own BS. I did an interview today down in Florida because I'm going to be down at the muster there for the Navy SEAL UDT SEAL Museum. And I'm going to be the keynote speaker on November 7th. So if you get a chance to come out to that, do. I'll be selling books, T-shirts, signing the books. I'll sign a T-shirt for you if you want. Come down there. But I was doing this phone interview for this show, and it was somebody that and I'm sorry, I apologize to you. If you listen to this, let me know, because I have lost the direct message that I had on Facebook of who said this to me a long time ago, but it was one of the listeners and followers of my page. And they said, President Trump is not the man who's going to dock the ship. He's the man who turned it. And that's absolutely right. If he didn't take control of the media and take them by the horns and disrespect them back, they would walk all over him. He would be an appeasement president, kind of like George Bush. But he's not. And that's what's made the biggest change in this country. Keep listening here.
Doing it over and over, and it's boring, and it's time to end that. You've won the nomination. And
I guess she's talking about the Nobel Peace Prize.
Why do you keep hammering at this? And he said, you know why I do it? I do it to discredit you all and demean you all, so when you write negative stories about me, no one will believe you.
I don't see anything wrong with that. It happens 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day, 60 seconds out of every minute, 60 minutes out of every hour.
Said that. So put that in your head for a minute.
Yeah. Put that microphone in your head, Leslie Stahl. That's the way this is. These people are self-important, and it goes all up and down the entire chain and spectrum of media, social media, politics. And this is another thing I want to, and by the way, these are going to be a couple short shows because I'm leaving tonight to head towards Illinois for this event. By the way, I should just say this. If you're in Illinois, anywhere around Homer Glen, Illinois, and the location where this is actually going to be happening is, stand by one second, let me pull up the flyer here, Canoe Farm in Homer Glen, Illinois, if you know where that is. I put the flyer up on all my social media, and it's the GOP Jamboree. RNC speaker Ann Dorn, if you saw her husband was the officer that was killed off duty during the riots in St. Louis. She's going to be speaking there. FOP President John Catanzara is going to be speaking there. But I can't wait to see Milk and Cooks and Bryson Gray. I love that song, Donald Trump is Your President. He's going to be, they're both going to be performing there. And they're looking at a lot of people that are going to be there. The GOP Jamboree, that's this Friday and you can get tickets. I'll just tell you real quick. $5 for high school, $10 for college. Pre-sales $20 and $35 walk up. And I'll have my books there, and I'll be emceeing the event. So if you can, come out to that. Now, one last thing I want to talk about here is, was actually two things real quick. Is one, I talked about this on yesterday's show about how, actually, when you hear this, it'll be Wednesday. So I talked about this on Monday's show about how Mark Thiessen had been on Fox News talking about how the voters don't want to hear about the Trump or about the Joe Biden, Hunter Biden story and the computer, and how that's not true. It's totally opposite, in fact, of the reality of what needs to be said. But just like I'm talking about how the Democrats and their message is all uniformed, right? But they're action oriented. The Republicans are similar, the Republican Party, in the way that they are saying the GOP to Trump says focus on policy. So you want to know where Thiessen gets his talking points. He gets them a lot of times from the Republican Party, as do many in Fox News. And because they are telling him the same exact thing. Stop concentrating on Joe Biden's computer and Hunter Biden's computer. Start focusing on policy. Now, yes, we do want to hear Trump talk about policy. Mainly, we want to hear Trump talk to us. But as you can see, even the FBI has come out and admitted that is not Russian disinformation, that is an actual real story. And the people do want to hear about it. But yet the GOP wants to keep the president from talking about that. Why? Why is that? I find that very odd. Last thing is, what is with all the people and either masturbating on a Zoom like Jeffrey Tubin, or Fort Bragg today? Somebody obviously was asleep at the wheel. It was not hacking. It was somebody, I can 100% guarantee, just like I did with Steve Scully's Twitter account, who he had texted something he thought was going to be a direct message to, what's his name? Little man Scaramucci. And it turns out he said it was hacked. It wasn't hacked. It was him. Nobody hacks a Twitter account and puts out one stupid tweet to a celebrity, a B-list or D-list celebrity that nobody cares about. Well, it's the same thing here. Fort Bragg, somebody who was manning the Twitter of Fort Bragg, decided to have a conversation with a cam girl who was exposing herself, and then all of a sudden everybody realized it and started going off, and Fort Bragg pulled down their Twitter account and says it was hacked. Newsflash, hackers don't hack a Twitter account and have a conversation, especially a government agency or a base, a military base. They don't hack their Twitter account just so they can have a conversation with a cam girl. It doesn't work like that. That's not the way hackers work. I doubt somebody is going to risk going to jail so that they can have a conversation with a cam girl. Whew. I'm sweating. Last thing is, I see a headline here. Portland NAACP chapter president resigns amid sexual abuse allegations. I want this to be a lesson for everybody. When somebody, because I know liberals are looking at this saying, oh, that's just, this stuff coming out right before the election, yada, yada, yada. They hate black people, and so they're going to put this up. Not true. When you see something like this, whether you're liberal or conservative, make sure that you look at the history that's behind this stuff, okay? This is 3 males that have accused this guy who is the head of the NAACP chapter in Portland, and his name is Reverend Albert Mondane, with a hyphen above E. Mondane. I don't know how you say that. He's denied the allegations, but has resigned. And as it turns out, it wasn't just 3 men. There's actually been 8 previous allegations before this about abuse from this guy in his church. So make sure that when you hear about allegations in the news, that you look into it a little bit. For instance, when you see all these things about the president, about President Trump, and these allegations of sexual misconduct or this and that, they don't add up to anything. There's been no substantiated evidence in any of this stuff. Just again and again, it's political. But you can kind of see where the politics ends and the reality begins, like in this case where this guy is accused by three males of sexual misconduct in the church. He resigns, but in the past, there's been 8 other individuals from the same church, males, who had made the same complaints. Very identical complaints. Another great example is Chris Cuomo, who, this was on Tucker Carlson tonight before his camera fell over, and they showed what looked to be like the bathroom where they're having the show. I don't know if you got to see that, but it was very quick. But Chris Cuomo, they were talking about how, he always goes on and on about these masks, but yet there's a letter issued by his building, by the building supervisor, saying that it's been reported over and over that he's not wearing the mask. The staff has asked him to wear the mask, and he refuses to wear his mask. The same type of nonsense that these people spew out all the time. That's just the way that the left rolls. Now, as I head out to Illinois, to the Canoe Farm in Homer Glen, Illinois, to MC the GOP Jamboree there Friday evening, I want you to stay focused. And I don't care if you consider yourself liberal or conservative. You have to seek truth. Ultimately, if you seek truth, you are going to find your path in life, and it is not going to be to the left, I guarantee, if you're seeking truth. I guarantee that. Your focus will be straight ahead. And that is what we should be looking at now before our freedom is taken from us by these corrupt politicians and the media that is controlling you. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and I'm on the road.